Hello and a very warm welcome to Rajya Sabha Television with me, Frank Pereira. For the second time in weeks, life in Chennai has been brought to a grinding halt because of flooding. The city received overnight rain that was the worst in a century, forcing the state government to release water from overflowing reservoirs and lakes around the city. The airport is closed, train services badly hit and power cut off to most parts of the city. Life has come to a standstill in India's automobile capital. In this edition of The Big Picture, we'll try and figure out what is causing this sudden downpour and how does the government plan to cope with the situation. Let me begin by introducing my guests on the program today. BP Yadav, Director of the Met Departments, joins me, as well as Santosh Kumar, Director, SAARC Disaster Management Centre. Jamal Ansari, former Director, School of Planning and Architecture. Rajesh Sundaram, Senior Journalist. And we'll also be joined on the phone line by Narayan, Lakshman, who is the Deputy Editor of The Hindu. I'd like to start with you, Narayan Lakshman, first, of course, and get a sense of what really is happening on the ground. We've seen the pictures being beamed back to us from Chennai, and the pictures, of course, are horrifying all of us. And we've never seen Chennai in this kind of a state, and never seen Chennai like this, of course. Give us a sense of what's really happening on the ground.
Hi, Frank. There is flooding in pretty much all of the city, and especially where I stand in Chemiers Road, which is pretty much at the center. The flood is sort of creeping higher and higher. I have a friend's mother just across in Koturpuram, which is a sort of an artery road, and she is in the third floor and has just been evacuated by the Coast Guard after, the water reached at least to the second floor level or at the top of the first floor. So things are getting pretty bad, and I think the local population here, there's a sense of great concern as the forecast predicts heavy to very heavy rain in the next 24 hours as well. So we're reaching that sort of inflection point where the resources have been stretched to their absolute limit. The authorities seem to be doing what they can, but it is very surely descending into what you could call a regional emergency situation.
The Air Force and the Army have been called in, and they've been taking care of the rescue ops really on the ground. But, who's really managing or micromanaging things at the ground level, and who's taking care really of the rescue ops?
Well, there are two parts, two answers to that question. The first is the public workers, both from police as well as maybe government workers or other officials working in sanitation department, general citizenry as well. All of these people are pitching in and doing their best. You've seen the many images on social media of completely like the Adia River and other parts, the water literally bursting out of the dams, pushing people and vehicles down, and that ever-present risk of open manholes, which is a sure death trap. So people are still putting their best foot forward, working through all this. And my hat's off and great respect again, just to the general citizenry of Chennai. They've put really opened up, many of them have opened up their homes, many of them are actively trying to help on the streets itself. But there's only so far that we can go, and honestly, everyone is kind of hoping that the rains will abate, and at some point the water will at least stop rising, if not begin to subside a bit.
Interesting that what you're saying, and you're saying that everything is now in the hands of the rain gods, but we'll have to see what really happens over the next 24 hours, because the Met Department has said that the next 24 hours could be extremely crucial as well, and we have the Director of the Met Department, BP Yadav, with us on the program. So let's figure out as to what's really causing this sudden downpour in Tamil Nadu and on the East Coast, of course. BP Yadav, what's causing this unusually high rainfall in Chennai?
Broadly, it is northeast monsoon season for South India and particularly over Tamil Nadu. And northeast monsoon rainfall, which was predicted by India Meteorological Department, was likely to remain above normal this year because of the El Nino conditions in the Pacific Ocean. And within this large-scale system of northeast monsoon, the small circulation, small troughs and low pressures are forming in the Bay of Bengal one after the other, and they are moving towards Tamil Nadu and South Andhra Pradesh, causing a few wet spells, a few spells of very heavy rain. And what I say is that this year, the frequency of these spells is much more. Over the last 15 days, there have been 4 heavy rainfall spells over Tamil Nadu and over around Chennai. So because the frequency of spells are more and the continuity or the duration of each spell is also more than 2 to 3 days, therefore there is a complete saturation of the all reservoirs. The water is any water which is added due to rainfall is resulted only in the rise in the water level.
Indeed. All right. Is the worst yet to come? I mean, that's the real question, isn't it? Because the Met Department has said that the next 24 to 48 hours are extremely crucial. We're going to find out from the Met Department director as to, whether it's going to rain some more in the near future. But, as far as the rescue ops are concerned, as far as, management on the ground is concerned, are you happy with what's happening? Do you think that we've done the best as we possibly can?
Yeah, I think we cannot say that this is always the best situation. There's always a kind of a scope of improvement, and we learn from the situation, from one situation to another. But if you compare that how we have been responding over the years, and that certainly we find this much more organized and kind of a much more kind of a coordinated kind of efforts, both from the state government, local government, and also from the national government. And you see this, the coordination which is happening from the army and also from the naval forces and also from the National Disaster Response Force, the local police force, and the community also. As the report was coming up, that large number of community they have come forward, the local community.
Yes.
And this happens. What happens when the post-disaster scenario, we are united. In the pre-disaster scenario, we are separated, and that's the problem. The problem, what we said, is not what is happening today is a problem. What we have been doing in the last so many years, that is the problem. As I could see that the water will further come, the rain would continue for another 24 hours. So what I am anticipating, the situation would be much more alarming in terms of as the resources have been stressed out, but large number of resources are also coming from the national government. So what is stressing out at the local level, that is supplemented with the national government. So even if the situation is alarming in terms of the physical environment, in terms of the disaster scenario, but the coping capacity of the local governance as well as the support from the national government will combine together with the people's effort. I think that people will come out with the kind of...
Talking about coping, Jamal Ansari, would you say that Chennai, who's seen several such cyclones in the past, seen several such bouts of torrential rainfall, is better equipped probably to cope with a situation like this?
Actually, I am not saying that not Chennai itself, but many cities in India, they are now increasingly facing the threats of more and more severe floods. And the situation is that our development process is now such that we don't really give our care what kind of development we should follow. There is always a real estate pressure. All low-lying areas are getting filled up and buildings are coming across. Huge campuses are being built across low-lying areas through which the rainwater would pass through to the river and into the sea. They are being covered, they are being blocked, they are being used for real estate development, and as a result of that, this is a situation which is increasing day by day. Increasing flood proneness of our cities is the theme of the day, and we have to do something from the point of view of planning and development.
Yes, better planning is the way forward, is what you're saying. But what do we do with the already existing situation or already existing problem?
Well, already existing problem is that what Dr. Santosh Kumar can say about it, that how they cope with the disaster. My job is, or my area of understanding is, that how we prevent these kinds of disasters from happening. You see, from thousands of years, cities have been there, and there has not been a conflict between river and the cities, because earlier the cities were built in such areas where they were beyond the reach of the rivers. Now we are getting into the river. We are constructing into the river basin areas. The river has taken lakhs and lakhs of years in order to construct two ways for itself. One, the channel through which the normal flow takes place, and one, the basin through which the flood water flows. Now what is happening today? That those very areas which are actually river basin areas, they are now being constructed upon, they are being encroached upon, and we are not doing much about it. So unless we take some steps there, these kinds of problems are going to take place more and more frequently. See, I don't want to give example, but I have just seen river basin of Krishna River, our new smart city, Amravati city is going to come up. I dread what will happen after 50 years to this city, because it is being built right into the flood-prone areas and right into the river basin area.
So identifying these areas and then constructing is what you're talking about. But Rajesh Sundaram, you spent a lot of years in Chennai. You've been there. You've seen the city, and you witnessed a couple of rainfalls as well over there. But have you seen pictures like this before?
Absolutely not. I think this also tells you about the need for political will to implement this, especially given that you have elections that are coming within the next year. I think this is something that politicians should look in a way which provides them solutions for the future, because you have planning and then you give, there are these mafias that exist, and there is nexus with the politicians and all of that which is spoken about. And then you have, rains like this that come in 100 years and, expose the corruption, expose all of that. So clearly for politicians, it's now time ahead of the elections to see what went wrong and see, get the collective political will to change things in the way that Mr. Ansari just spoke about.
What is the solution really, Santosh Kumar, to a problem like this? Because it could happen anywhere, not just in Chennai, it could happen anywhere. We've seen Mumbai also being flooded a couple of seasons ago. So no city is left out.
Yeah, if you see this entire what Professor Ansari was mentioning, if you see this example from Mumbai flood to Jammu and Kashmir and to Uttarakhand, and also are not only confined to India, even you go to South Asia, many examples you will find. You go to Southeast Asia, you will find many examples, Philippines and other countries, Indonesia, they are all into the similar kind of a trouble. But the important is that over the last 20, 30 years, if you look at the data across the globe, the hydrometeorological kind of instances of disasters have increased many-fold. And it's not stopping here. Many kind of a rise will happen, and the kind of impending disasters are there.
So are you attributing this to climate change as well?
Could be, because that's what we are saying, and Honorable Prime Minister has spoken in Paris, that how we are facing, and our whole globe is concerned about this. So this is an extreme event, we can say, because if you 1903 or 13, I'm just forgetting, but this kind of a rain has happened in Chennai city. But at that time, the population, the infrastructure, the development and the water sources, that was not that much. So water flow was very easy that time. As Professor Ansari said, that now we have been blocking those water flow, and see that what happened in Kashmir. So similar kind of instances which might come in future as well. Now the question is, what is the solution? And here then probably we have to think that we see this, what is our kind of a state of affairs today? What kind of a impending disaster which is waiting, and accounting that those risks, we have to account that into the development planning. And there we probably have to sectoral planning, regional planning, and also with the local planning. So that probably would take that step. And if we are ignoring and we...
No, I agree with you that that is the way forward and that's what needs to be done. But Rajesh Sundaram, are the mafias really going to allow you to plan in this way and implement that plan?
It hasn't been the case for the past many decades, I think, and that's what's led to the situations that we spoke about earlier. Until the politicians sit down and say that this much and no more, or we'll reverse some of the things that have happened in the past. Situations like this will continue to arise, and I think with much greater regularity.
I think
you don't agree with it?
I would say that we all are responsible for this, because when we are developing, and if we say that, what we say that when we go about the pre-disaster scenario, we are disintegrated in terms of attacking to the risk which we are going to face in future. So there probably we don't recognize that risk exists. And when disaster happens, then we start talking about the risk reduction or something like that, disaster response. So what we are saying that we are equally responsible as a citizen, that whether we are concerned about these kind of... The tsunami happened in 2004 and it was handled very nicely during that time, and Nagapatnam and all this happened, and the state has experience. Now the question is that after tsunami what? That kind of whether we have gone forward for the preparing for that the state. Similarly, all the states in India, we have to see this, not a single state in India is a disaster-free state. The question is, the state has been allocated this task by the Constitution of India. Now it's important that how the state government, the national government, the local government, along with all the stakeholders, which community, the people, how we are going to work together for taking the shape. We just said the private sector, they have the 90% of the investment. And private sector, how much private sector engage in the disaster risk reduction? This is the question to be raised. That whether we are talking about that, bring them into the on the board. Similarly, what we are saying that community, they are getting affected. You see that response, and the reporter was saying that all people locally, they are engaged in this. The similar way, the similar kind of a commitment are we having in the pre-disaster scenario to stop those kind of a risk which is generating every day, every year.
Narayan Lakshman is not our reporter, but he's the deputy editor of the Hindu, and he's our guest. But he's giving us a ground report from what's really happening.
It's a kind of classic example.
Let me just go across to him and see what he has to say in the meantime. Narayan, yeah, you were saying something.
Yeah, so I just wanted to echo what Mr. Sundaram said, which is that along with this sense of frustration and even absolute fear or anxiety of the rising water level at the local level here, there is a growing sense of public anger. And I mean, that totally ties into the conversation that we're having here today, which is that as people recover from the sheer disaster that has hit their lives, they are going to be asking some very strong questions about public policy and why it has failed so epically in this case, whether you're looking at the desilting of the various canals and the drainage systems, and people are not, unaware that various contracts have been handed out over the years. People have supposed to have been, improving this infrastructure. They are going to be looking much more closely at what has happened to all this. So while you say, there are many such disaster-prone areas of India and the rest of the world, and people move on and ask what happens after the tsunami. A whole number of people's lives have actually been very badly disrupted, even in many cases destroyed. We know that the death toll itself is nearly, in the region of 200, and it may probably climb much higher. So this is not a light matter of some academic debate, but what I can pick up from my from the very many cases that I've been hearing about over the last 24 plus hours, there is a growing sense of anger, and as I said, it is certainly going to alight upon the question of public policy and why this government or whichever authorities are responsible have not done more to improve the way that water does drain out of these areas when there is such a rain of this proportion. I mean, you have to actually be on the ground. I'm sure you're seeing all the television pictures, but you have to just take one look at one of the streets or neighborhoods here to realize that something is very, very wrong, literally beneath the tar or asphalt surface.
Indeed, don't want to politicize the entire issue, but, like Rajesh was mentioning that, elections are just around the corner as in Tamil Nadu, but is this particular situation or everything that's going on in Tamil Nadu and Chennai in particular at the moment, is it going to have any kind of bearing on the polls to come?
I certainly think so. I think Tamil Nadu has historically been the kind of state where, people do not hesitate to punish a government or reward it depending on its performance. And as you know, it's a state which has seen a history of swing votes. Certainly, some parties are well entrenched right now, and the power balance is not. It is a certain way. It is what it is. But having said that, again, I'm just speaking for the local population. In this case, people in various neighborhoods of Chennai. There is an acute awareness of these issues, and people will not hesitate to take out. If they have anything to protest, they will certainly be out there on the streets, and I am very confident it will have some impact on the election outcome, or at least on the process. It will be part of the conversation.
All right, Rajesh, you wanted to add something to that?
Well, what happens over the next 72 hours, perhaps the people will be willing to forgive the government because that's the fury of the nature. But what happens later is what the governments will be made or they will lose their power.
It happened a couple of weeks ago and it's happening
Absolutely.
again.
If the disaster that happens after the natural disaster is worse than the natural disaster, then governments will change, heads will roll. But if they use the next 48 hours, the next 72 hours to come, get control on the situation, they ensure that there's no disease, no threat of the secondary impact that happens to such disasters, then the government would have done well for itself. Otherwise, they'll give enough points to the opposition to score against them.
Yes, please go ahead.
Well, I wanted to come to an earlier point that please don't blame this disaster to climate change. Because if this happened, this kind of a rainfall happened 100 years ago, there was no climate change then. Is it just escapism? Yeah, actually the problem is that unless we make a conscious decision that we won't let our cities to grow into low-lying areas, we won't let our cities to obstruct water flow lines of the river and of the storm water when the storm comes, we will have these kinds of instances more frequently. Is it cities in Gujarat, cities in Jammu and Kashmir? Chennai was never heard of as a flood-prone area. Bangalore and all these places regularly coming. What is this? This is happening because we are not caring about cities. We are allowing the cities to grow into areas which are hazardous prone. And as the mafia, you see, all kinds of pressures. The decision makers have to sit consciously and listen to planners. We keep on telling that please don't let the city develop there and there and there. But nobody listens. The planner gets a negative image. They keep on saying no, no, no to everything. But the fact is that if they listen to planners now, I think we can begin to cope with at least the flood disaster. It can be coped. It can be coped in future.
You're talking about coping and talking about the future. Of course, we knew that the rains were going to come and Chennai was going to go through maybe not this huge kind of a situation, but something like this was going to happen. The Met Department issued warnings. Could we have dealt with the situation far better? Clearly evacuation is not something that's on the cards as far as Chennai is concerned, because it's a huge city, a lot of people, and it's very difficult to evacuate them. But could something else have been done?
No, this is the time where we can do better, at least for the next 24 hours and 48 hours, what he is saying. Because now the national forces are also there. State forces are also there, communities are on the also street. It is important that we should start checking the secondary disasters. That is very, very important. People to be evacuated to the kind of safer places. People should be given water and food shelter. That is important, that to be taken care of, and that I'm sure that that would be done because additional resources have been given to the state. Also, the third
something else that I wanted to bring to your notice is the fact that, the men in uniform, that is the Army, the Air Force and the Navy, have always been there for us time and again, every time there has been an issue like this. But is it really the job of the Army, the Navy and the Air Force to conduct such kind of operations, rescue ops, or shouldn't we have a specialized force, probably the NDRF and the others?
We have, and they are there already on the ground.
But are they doing enough is the question, because on the pictures at least, because I've not gone there, so I'm just talking about what I've seen so far.
9 battalions are there, and so 9 battalions they are working, plus some more forces are going. So important is too that how much required at that place, and normally in all the disasters, our armed forces have been there, and plus supplemented by the National Disaster Response Force. And many a times we have seen that National Disaster Response Force has been the key responder, and other forces are supplementing those efforts, depending on the situation. Here also, if you see that the large response is managed by all the sectoral people, whether the Army or the Naval or the NDRF forces. But much more important is also the local government and the local community. That their role is very important. What I'm saying, there's a coping capacity. The capacity of the local people, we have to build that in terms of the time to come, because in any of the such kind of a large scale disasters, and when we know that 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours and 4 days, in such kind of a disaster, local community and local governance should be well equipped to actually address this kind of a issue.
Indeed.
Number one. And number two, then depend on the supplementary forces. So first 3 days planning should be done with our own forces and the local community forces.
We're completely out of time on the program, but one final reaction I want to get from BP Yadav, if he's still with us on the program. BP Yadav, would you say that the next 24 hours are extremely crucial? What is it that we can expect over the next 24 hours?
No, I thought you forgot India Meteorology Department during the course of discussion. Anyway, we have issued warnings, and 24 hours to 48 hours are very crucial. I want to add one more thing, that now the India Meteorological Department has the capacity for early warning. These early warnings should be taken seriously. Early warnings are not taken that seriously. We have issued these warnings much in advance. And these warnings are to be taken seriously by the public.
Well, we seem to have some technical issue there with the line with BP Yadav, but unfortunately we are completely out of time on the program. We'll have to call it a wrap on that. BP Yadav, Santosh Kumar, Jamal Ansari, Rajesh Sundaram and Narayan Lakshman, thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me on the program and sharing your views on this subject. That's all the time we have. Good night.